Did you know that Dobby was supposed to be in the Goblet of Fire, but the movie removed him? And not only was he meant to be a central part of the story, but he actually gets a paying job at Hogwarts. There are so many important moments from the book that never made it into the movie, but this is one of the most intriguing and mysterious by far. In Chapter 21 of the Goblet of Fire book, our trio explore a brand new part of the castle that we've yet to learn about: the Hogwarts kitchens. For Harry Potter fans who have never read the book, or might not remember, this is a wild ride that reunites us with Dobby and another house elf named Winky, and it plants the seeds for one of the biggest plot twists in the series so far. While the movie simply shows us a montage of funny moments before the Yule Ball, the book dives deeper into subplots upon subplots. So that's why in today's video, I'm going to compare chapters 21 and 22 of the book to their corresponding scenes in the movie, and point out every single difference, analyzing characters, lore, and more along the way. My name is Gibby, and welcome to episode 51 of Movies vs. Manuscripts, Harry Potter Edition. Welcome back to my channel, Factor Fantasy, where I dive deep into Harry Potter lore each and every week. If you're new here and enjoy the video, please smash that like button and share with a Harry Potter loving friend, as that greatly helps this community grow. Per usual, we'll cover all the changes across the four major categories of characters, timeline, location, and plot. But first, let's do a brief recap of what happens during these scenes in the movie. That way, it's fresh in our mind for the analysis. Also, big shout out to this commenter from the last episode. If you want to be featured next, be sure to drop your thoughts down below when you're done watching. So anyway, picking up from where we left off last episode, we see the trio in the Great Hall eating their breakfast as the Patil sisters walk by and say hi to Harry, and Harry spills juice out of his mouth while looking at Cho. Suddenly, Hermione erupts from across the table as she reads Rita Skeeter's new article all about her supposed romance with Harry and Victor Crumb. Then a first year named Nigel comes up and delivers a package to Ron, who had evidently promised him an autograph from Harry if he acted as his servant. Ron shoos the kid away and opens up the package, revealing his ugly dress robes. And on the note of dress robes, the movie cuts to McGonagall telling the students about the Yule Ball, and then using Ron to help her demonstrate how they should dance. The movie then gives us a string of scenes which include Hagrid talking to Madame Maxime, Harry and Ron trying to find a date, and finally Ron offending Hermione, who tells him that she's already been asked to go to the ball. Finally, after promising each other that they'd get the courage to ask a girl to the ball, Ron and Harry part ways and we see Harry try to ask Cho at the Owlery. Sadly though, he gets turned down as Cho tells him that she's already been asked by someone else. The movie then cuts to the Gryffindor common room as Ron gets brought in by Ginny and some of the other girls because he looks too sick to support himself. Ginny says that Ron just asked Fleur to the ball, and then ran away. At this point, Harry has no other choice but to ask the Patil sisters, who walk by right at that moment, saying hi to Harry once again. And that is where our scenes end for this week. Before I go diving into the many plot changes and reveal the mysterious plot in the kitchens of Hogwarts, let's explore our first three categories of characters, timeline, and location. First up, in our character category, we're missing Ludo Bagman, who this time doesn't appear, but he's mentioned in these chapters. We also don't see Rita Skeeter, who seems to always be lurking around the castle during this whole school year. And it's worth mentioning that Nigel is a movie-only addition. However, I don't know why the movie didn't instead include Colin Creevey and his younger brother Dennis. It would have worked out the same way, but at least they could have used a real character who is canonically obsessed with Harry. Anyway, our final change for the character category is that we're missing Dobby and Winky, as well as all of the other house elves in the kitchens. Next, for timeline, we only have one major deviation, which is the fact that Ron got his dress robes before the school year even started, when he was packing his things in the burrow. But we'll talk about that more in the plot changes. And lastly, for our first three categories, we have location, which is another simple one this week, as we're really only missing Hagrid's hut and the Care of Magical Creatures classroom, aka Hagrid's yard. Now, before I dive into the plot changes, I just wanted to thank Jason, Joshua, Timothy, Robo Steve, and the rest of my incredible members who support the channel each month and help make these videos possible. Also, I can't go through the book word for word because that would take forever, but I'll do my best to point out all of the revisions, omissions, and additions. However, if you're wanting to relive these moments for yourself, I highly recommend checking out the audiobook on Audible. You can use the link in the description to claim it for free, and it supports the channel at the same time. So if you're looking for a way to support and get something in return, that's an incredible free way to do that. Now with that being said, let's jump into the plot changes. Obviously, there's a massive section of the book that was entirely removed from the movie, but before we get to that, there's a few smaller changes that I want to address first. To start, Harry doesn't spill juice out of his mouth while looking at Cho during breakfast. While there are many moments of Harry thinking about or looking at Cho in the book, he doesn't do something this embarrassing. Second, the article Hermione reads at the beginning of these scenes doesn't exist in the book. It's almost a mixture between two other articles. The first one Rita wrote about Harry, in which she mentioned Hermione being his girlfriend, and the second being an article in Witch Weekly that Rita published around the time of the second task. This makes way more sense as the second task took place in February, and Krum had started hanging out with Hermione a lot more by that point. If you remember from last episode, Hermione never visited Harry in the champion's tent during the first task, and therefore she wasn't photographed hugging him like the movie shows. The third and final change before some of our omissions is the fact that Nigel doesn't exist in the book and no first year is at Ron's command in exchange for Harry's autograph. I think the movie just added that for comedic effect. But speaking of comedic effect, our first omission for today's episode doesn't take us to the kitchens of Hogwarts, but rather to Hagrid's for a Care of Magical Creatures class, which if you know anything about his classes in the book, you always get a good laugh. In the book, we're still reading about various classes and moments around school that Harry is having during the year, while the movie fast-forwards quite a bit to get to the Yule Ball. During this class, Hagrid has the students trying to get the blast-ended Skrewts to hibernate. There are only 10 Skrewts left at this point as they have continued to try to kill each other, and Hagrid says that he's not sure if they hibernate or not. Since winter is coming, he figured that they'd give it a shot. But this exercise of trying to swaddle the Skrewts into blankets and then stuff them in boxes ended quite poorly for the students as most of them walked away with multiple injuries. During this insane task, Rita Skeeter popped onto the scene, and after realizing that Harry was in the class, she asked Hagrid for an interview that Friday. Hagrid, being naive as usual, said yes to the interview, and Harry cringed about it as he thought of how Rita would warp Hagrid's words to fit her angle for whatever article she'd be writing. Our next change brings up yet another omitted class, as we read about Harry and Ron having double divination that same afternoon. Harry's past few divination classes have not been very enjoyable, given the fact that him and Ron weren't on speaking terms. But now that the two friends were talking again, things were just as lively as ever, with them laughing and joking about Trelawney's usual antics. She loved their homework as they usually turned in predictions of their own painful deaths, but she wasn't too keen on their talking during classes. For example, after hearing them snicker in the back of the classroom, Trelawney told them that she looked into her crystal ball this morning and rhetorically asked them what they think she saw. Ron turned to Harry and muttered that she probably saw, quote, an ugly old bat in outsized specs. But alas, this was not where Trelawney was heading, as she told the students that she saw death, and therefore they should be taking the class more seriously. Despite Trelawney seeming insane, she somehow gets things unintentionally right every year. Once again, this death prediction, as vague as it is, will come true by the end of the school year. But now with those classes out of the way, we finally come to the omission you've all been waiting for, which is the trio's trip to the kitchens. After Harry and Ron finished up their classes for the day, they headed back to the Gryffindor common room to see where Hermione was, as she doesn't take divination with them. Suddenly, after opening the fat lady portrait, Hermione came running out excitedly and told Harry that he must follow her right now, and that the most amazing thing has just happened. Shocked and confused, Harry and Ron followed Hermione through the castle as she took them down a set of stairs that led them downward and had paintings of food all around. After seeing the food, Harry caught on and nudged Ron, who also got the idea. If you remember from last episode, we talked about how Fred and George shared their secret of where they steal food from, as the way to get into the kitchens is by tickling a piece of fruit on a painting of a fruit bowl. Immediately, Ron told Hermione that he didn't want to be a part of Spew or whatever she was calling it now, but she reassured them that this was something else, and as soon as they opened up the secret portrait hole entrance to the kitchens, a small thing hurtled towards Harry and hugged him. It was Dobby. Harry was ecstatic to see him, but also confused as the little house elf was no longer wearing a gross pillowcase, but rather an assortment of odd clothing. He was wearing a tea cozy for a hat, a necktie with horseshoes on it, soccer shorts, and odd socks, one of which was the black sock Harry used to free him a couple of years back. We then learn that Dobby was given a job here at Hogwarts only a week ago by Dumbledore, a paying job, he and Winky. Now if you don't remember, Winky was Barty Crouch's house elf, who was caught with Harry's wand during the commotion of the Quidditch World Cup. She was blamed for conjuring the Dark Mark until Harry told them that it was a man, but all the same, she was fired by Barty Crouch out of the pure embarrassment that she caused him. And let's just say Winky isn't taking it well. We'll see in future episodes that Winky becomes somewhat of an alcoholic, but that's not something we'll address today. Anyway, in this chapter, the trio gathered around Winky, who burst into tears at the sight of them, and Dobby continues on to tell Harry that he has traveled the country for the last 2 years, seeking employment but continuously getting rejected. You see, wizarding families don't want to pay a house elf. As Dobby talks, the other house elves in the kitchen look away and keep their distance, as if Dobby's mentality is a contagious disease. He finishes his story by telling the trio that after finding out Winky got fired as well, he thought to come to Hogwarts, and sure enough, Dumbledore gave them both a job. Dobby is getting paid 1 galleon per week and has 1 day off per month, which Hermione says is horrible. But then Dobby tells her that he was offered 10 galleons a week and weekends off, but he declined it. He likes his freedom, but doesn't want too much of it. Winky, on the other hand, says that she hasn't sunk that low yet and refuses to be paid, and the whole while she is crying on the floor. Anyway, without getting too into the weeds of the rest of their conversation, I can tell you that this is just the beginning of a very important subplot in the story, and it has effects on the main plot as well. Winky goes on to tell the trio that Mr. Bagman, meaning Ludo, is a very bad wizard, and Barty Crouch doesn't like him at all. She is also shocked to learn that Crouch and Bagman have been at the castle for the Triwizard Tournament. Also, Ron promises to give Dobby his sweater that his mom knits for him every Christmas, and this absolutely makes Dobby's day. Eventually, after being offered more food from the house elves, the trio leave and head back to their dorms. Now, would you believe me if I told you that there are 9 more changes and omissions regarding the rest of these scenes? While the visit to the kitchens is important and very interesting for die-hard Harry Potter fans, there's so much more to explore this week, so make sure to keep watching. Our next change is a smaller one, and that is the fact that the Patil sisters are not both in Gryffindor, and the movie slightly changed these characters. In the book, it is actually Parvati Patil and Lavender Brown who constantly look at Harry and giggle to each other. Plus, they don't walk by him and say, "Hi Harry," like the movie shows. Next, there isn't a big dance class like in the movie. Rather, McGonagall fills the students in on what the Yule Ball is at the end of one of their Transfiguration classes. There is no practice dance session, and Ron sadly does not get embarrassed in front of the whole school. In fact, the dance scene isn't really a thing for the whole school. Despite the ball being a dance, McGonagall only talks to Harry about this, saying that the champions are required to have dance partners, and since he represents Hogwarts, and more importantly Gryffindor, she expects him to have one. This then puts the pressure on Harry to find a girl to go with him very soon. Next, the conversation we see between Hagrid and Madame Maxime is misplaced and twisted. I won't get into the specific dialogue, but this conversation actually happens during the Yule Ball itself, and will be used by Rita Skeeter in a not-so-nice article later on, that never got included in the movie, by the way. Like I said at the beginning of this video, there are subplots upon subplots in this book, and Hagrid and Madame Maxime's relationship is one of those that the movie never delved into. But anyway, another revision the movie made is the fact that Harry really should have had no struggle with girls. He does because he's awkward and he really just wants to go to the ball with Cho, but the movie makes it seem like girls treat him and Ron like the plague. Technically though, in the book, multiple girls actually come up and ask Harry to go to the ball. And as Harry walks around school, girls just stare at him and giggle. After all, he is famous and he has beaten dragons. We read that the first girl who asked him to go to the ball got a quick no, because he was so shocked that he didn't even have time to think it over. Then the next day, 2 more girls asked him, with one of them being a 5th year who was a foot taller than him. Despite thinking that she looked pretty, Harry told Ron that he didn't want to feel like the girl could knock him out if she wanted to. Now moving on to another omitted moment from the book, we learn about Hagrid's interview with Rita Skeeter. The trio ask him the next week how it went, and he tells them that it was pretty basic. She just asked him a bunch of questions about Harry the whole time. No doubt she was trying to find some dirt on Harry from Hagrid, but he kept telling her that Harry is a good kid. We'll see later on that Rita will find another angle for her article regarding Hagrid, and that'll mix with his and Madame Maxime's relationship. Unfortunately, Rita is a lot nastier in the books. But moving on, our next change is that there's a part of chapter 22 that seems to have inspired a few moments in these scenes. It's a moment of the trio sitting in the common room and talking, and during their conversation, Ron makes a comment about Eloise Midgen as he insinuates that he doesn't want to go to the ball with her. This upsets Hermione, who is offended that Ron only cares about looks. Fred and George then come over and ask to borrow Pigwidgeon to send a letter, which is a whole other subplot by the way. Then after this, Fred asks Angelina to go to the ball. So as you can see, this moment in the common room inspired part of their conversation during the study hall scene, it inspired the joke Ron makes about Eloise Midgen during the dancing scene, and it inspired Fred asking Angelina to the ball. And now we have our final 3 changes, which are smaller ones to finish things off for this episode. First, Harry asks Cho to go to the ball after potions class, not up by the owlry. Second, Neville actually asks Hermione to go to the ball with him, but she told him no because she already has a date. Ron thinks that this was just an excuse, but as we know, Hermione really did have a date. Then Ron learns that Ginny said yes to Neville as he asked her after Hermione, and Ginny knew that she was too young to go to the ball because it was only for 4th years and up, unless someone else asked her. So she said yes. And finally, the last change of the week is the fact that Harry at first asks Lavender to go to the ball with Ron, but she says that she's already going with Seamus. So Parvati, who eagerly said yes to Harry, reluctantly says that she could ask her sister, Padma, who is in Ravenclaw. She seems to already know that Padma doesn't want any part of going to the ball with Ron, but because Parvati so desperately wants to go with Harry, she forces her sister to go as well. Personally, I find it strange that the earlier movies cut so much of Lavender's personality and lines, given the fact that she's such a big supporting character in future books. I mean, all of their divination classes in the 3rd year are Lavender and Parvati being obsessed with Trelawney, but in the movies they make everything about Parvati and Padma together as sisters, despite Padma actually being a Ravenclaw according to canon. But anyway, what do you think about that change? Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and check out the series playlist to catch up on any episodes you might have missed so far. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next episode.